I will now call this meeting to order. That's the best I can do. Okay, welcome everyone. Do we have in public? We don't go to public yet. So we have the oath of office.
Oh, okay. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, Betsy, you can stand up. You have your.
I have my.
Okay.
And let's see, Betsy, your last name, tell me again.
It's Tucker.
Tucker, that's right. Okay, I, Betsy Tucker, do solemnly swear or affirm. Yep.
I, Betsy Tucker, do solemnly swear
Or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the laws thereof,
and the laws thereof,
and the policies of the Deschutes Public Library District.
and the policies of the Deschutes Public Library District.
During my term, I will faithfully and impartially discharge the responsibilities
During my term, I will faithfully and impartially discharge the responsibilities
of the office of Deschutes Public Library District Board member to the best of my ability.
of the office of Deschutes Public Library District Board member to the best of my ability.
Great. Thank you very much, Betsy, and welcome to the board. We look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you.
All righty. Excuse me. Minutes from March 13th meeting. Do we have any corrections or additions? No? Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to accept those?
I'll move to approve the March 13th, 2024 board meeting minutes.
Okay, and a second?
I will second.
All righty, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion and the approval of the minutes passed. We also had, excuse me, a March 28th special work session. We should have minutes there. Are there any additions or corrections to those? No? Do I have a motion to approve those?
I so move.
A second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Do we have any anyone from the public in the meeting that would like to speak?
Checking, see if everybody online. Megan, did you want to say anything? Sorry.
Nobody signed up. Oh, no.
Okay.
Not to speak.
Okay.
Okay, no, we do not have anybody from the public.
Okay, no public to speak. And welcome everyone to our first 5:30 meeting, evening meeting.
Yeah.
Hopefully this all goes well and will be a nice advantage for the board. Okay, Greg, it looks like you're up. Bond updates.
You don't mind, I'm gonna sit up here.
Yeah, please do.
And then I do want to share my screen, so I will get.
Okay, that's great. And you all got your bingo cards, so you can follow along with Greg for any acronyms or abbreviations.
So I'm gonna share the budget report. And I don't know, from a light standpoint, it might be a little bit better with that one go on, just to see numbers.
Are we supposed to see the screen share? Because I don't see anything.
No, not yet.
You know what? It's saying I'm reconnecting.
Oh, okay.
It says it. There it goes.
How's that, Bunny?
I can see it very nicely. Thank you.
So kind of going through, usually I go through the whole report and talk about it, but kind of just streamlining it a little bit. And not really redoing the whole report, but just seeing what questions you guys might have. And I really wanted to focus a lot tonight on the budget update. As you saw, there was a lot of changes to it. I added a new report in, which is the contingency report. And so I think we want to talk about that as well.
And then that's at the end of Greg's packet.
Yeah. And I'll be able to share some things.
I'm not hearing anything from Greg.
No. How about now?
Now I can hear it.
Okay, I was pausing my talking there for a minute. but-
Oh, okay.
So just a quick overview of the report. Schedule wise, there really wasn't anything that I had updated. Generally staying pretty much the same unless there's questions about that. I'll go through all of the budget pieces. The other elements of the report relative to any questions about design construction or where we're at and what's going on any of those?
I had a question just about where we are with the city of Bend approving the plat map, how close we actually are, what are their remaining issues? And then regarding your statements about that we had gotten comments back on our second phase of
Yep.
plans, and was the volume of comments unexpected, or, I mean, I was, were there a lot of things to address in that, or was it pretty minor, or
Yeah.
just how the whole permitting process is going?
Yeah, so first question on the plat map, and that's for the central library at Stevens Ranch. The plat map is being processed by the developer in order to create the lots that DPL is purchasing for. So the current status, literally as of yesterday, conversations with the developer and the city that I've had with them. The map itself, it was submitted to the city last week. They went through it. They had a couple more changes they requested. The engineer for the developer is making those changes this week. When they're complete, the developer will sign the plat map, and then it'll be submitted to the city for final approval. Once the city approves the plat, then it's circulated among city staff, or there's certain people, there's about 6 signatures that they have to sign, what are called Mylars, and it's a reproducible document.
Mm-hmm.
Once those are signed, it'll go to the county surveyor. They review it and then they record it. In order for the city, so the city has previously reviewed the plat map. They issued a decision on the plat back to the developer, and that decision said it's approved pending these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what one of the things that the developer and his vendors have been working on. Is meeting those conditions. The decision became final on Monday because there was no appeal of that decision, and the developer could have appealed any of the conditions that the city put on him, and he didn't. So it's currently just in this last round, and the changes to the plat were literally minor changes to the alignment of utility easements. So we have utility easements on 3 sides of the 4. I have 4 sides running up and down, and that's for sewer, water, and power. The other items that were open issues under the decision was a bond that needed to be submitted for the sanitary sewer in Santorini Street.
Okay.
And the sewer is constructed, but the city hasn't accepted it yet because there's some punch list work that they've given to the contractor about a sealant that was applied on the inside. And so they've allowed the contractor to post a bond. That bond was submitted last week and accepted by the city. So they're recently, the other items that were open is the permit for Santorini Street has to be closed by the city. And they've been out there running up and down the street doing more inspections. And I know from what I heard, there was a panel of concrete sidewalk that they made them remove and replace. They've actually done this a few times over the last 2.5 months. They replaced 3 handicap ramps. It's the city's opportunity where they can actually review process, because once it's finalized the plat, they accept these improvements. And so they are, I wouldn't say sticklers, they want it done right and complete.
Right.
Ideally, we currently have targeted the 26th of the month to have the plat finalized and recorded. I think based on where we're at, we're planning to push all the way up to that date. So that's the current status of the plat. We do have good dialogue going on directly with the city, so I talk to the developer and hear what he has to say, and then I call the city. I've actually been emailing with 4 different city staff members in planning and engineering to get their take on where's he at in finishing.
Right.
And what's going to be required. So it was encouraging. The engineer who responded for the city said, really close.
Yeah.
But that's true. So that's where that sits.
Okay.
And the plat triggers 2 important components. One, it releases our first building permit. So it's a condition. And then it also is what then lets us to finalize our purchase sale agreement. We have a purchase sale agreement. And once the plat's done, then that's when DPL technically owns the land. And at that point, closing will happen, and we've funded escrow, so we're ready to close on it. Literally, it's set up that it'll be a day or 2 after recording, the closing will happen. Title has already reviewed the plat map, the initial, the draft that city reviewed last week. Said it meets all their requirements for the title insurance and for closing. So it was just one of those boxes we wanted to check and make sure that they didn't have any. And right now, title is set. As soon as it records, you're ready to close.
Okay.
So that's the situation there. On the permit, so the phase 2 permit, we got the comments. The quantity of comments for this first round of plan check on the full building permit were very much in alignment with what we would expect to see. There were nothing in there that was really problematic or troublesome that the design team could not address and answer. And I joined the design team in a meeting with the city plan checker to go through and talk about those comments. And it was very much the plan checker's interpretation, and almost everything the architect said, well, here's how we interpret it, and he said, oh, that makes sense, write that up and send it in.
No.
Out of all of them, he had one that he said, send it in, I gotta think about that.
Okay,
So it was actually pretty good. They are intending to resubmit back into plan check on the 18th of April. So they were actually addressing all of those comments in 3 weeks. We had originally planned 4 weeks for them to do that. But they had gotten some of the comments early. They got all the structural a little bit early, so they were able to get a jump on it. And get that moving.
okay.
Greg, not to stress you out, but I think your Zoom link dropped.
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, it just came back on.
Oh, okay. Oh, it did.
But we're sharing again. Any other questions about the report? So,
On the plat and the recording and all, what's the time frame before we actually close? Do you have an approximate?
right now, we're targeting the 26th of April to get the plat finalized.
Okay,
And then closing will probably happen within a day or two. Because we literally have everything in there. That's been one of the things that in working with Dan Camp, our broker, Compass Commercial, he's been working really closely with title to make sure that we did everything we could do to be prepared.
okay. And then at closing, does the board need to do anything in particular?
No
Okay.
action for the board. It's literally just completion of the transaction that was agreed to under the purchase sale agreement.
Okay, good.
If not, Aaron, Betsy, did you guys in the report see the links to see photos and videos and all that we're able to get at? Perfect. It's always nice when they work.
Yeah.
So the one part of the report kind of skipped over here was the budget piece. And so I thought I would do a couple things. One is kind of go through the write-up where up here and then walk us through that. I've got it up on my screen, the report as well as in your report there. So generally, we always start out with sources of funds, right? Where is money coming from? So that's this section down here. For the most part, bond funds didn't change, of course. The bond premium did not change. The interest on the bonds actually increased slightly. And so that increase was about $360,000 over previous, and that was just additional earnings. So the 11,802,000 went up by about 360,000, and that was, as I say, driven by just increased earnings on certain investments of those funds. The donations and grants, the 7 million, that did not change. It remains as is. And just wanted to give you guys an update overall of out of that right now, 5.2 million has been either received or pledged in forms of grants, for utility grants. We've got about 1.3 million in utility grants and about 4 million or so in donations that are pledged and or received. It's a combination. So that is well along its goal to where we need to be. Those funds really will funnel in near the end of the month as needed. The water line, no change on that. Stevens Ranch Lot 2 sale. So this is different. That hasn't been on the report in the past. Previously, what we had set up in the Stevens Ranch Central budget we had the cost of purchasing the new land at Stevens Ranch. And the value of the sale by selling lot 2. And it was blended in, and it wasn't as transparent. And so through some discussions, we decided to move the sale to a source of funds, because just so we could track it. The value, $1,378,000, is set by the actual square footage of lot 2 based on the plat map. So as we finalized it, because we did make some adjustments, we always talked it's about 1.3 acres, and it ends up being 1.26. And we set it at that square footage times the value that we paid for the land, based on what was in the purchase sale, to set this $1,378,000. And that's just an anticipation of, okay, at some point there will be a sale of that land, however that transacts. And then there's this miscellaneous revenue, which is just a little tiny rebate. But you kind of account for it, keep it in balance, and that's always been there. So our current total sources is $244,697,812. And you can see right up above here, under total program cost, that cell there, it is matches up with our total sources. So, you know, sources and expenditures, of course, are the one. So that's where we're at on sources. We'll go back up here and start going through what the changes were this past month. On the general administrative budget, and it's just that it's this cost up here, 13 million. And those are costs that aren't specific to one of the work packages, but support all of the work packages. There's no change to that budget this month. There's 2 major components of that budget. One being the collection that DPL is going to purchase, which has a large chunk of money, and the other is our fees as the owner's representative. And so those, the line items within that budget, we evaluated them, looked at where they are as compared to the master development schedule, and that those dollars are tracking to that. Collection is tracking to what's currently planned to be purchased, and so that'll be working out. We haven't made any changes to that budget. It remains what we consider very sound at this point, and didn't see any real impacts there. The next budget being central. So the first one that came up in the change is in site and due diligence, and that change was really driven by, that's where we carry the land cost for the purchase of the property at Stevens Ranch. And there was a $1.7 million adjustment there. And that was the value that we had targeted to sell the land at. So it was based on a little bit higher square footage, and it was based on about a year or so ago, we had had discussions with Compass Commercial about the property. There was an interested potential buyer at that point. And so Compass gave us a recommendation of cost of where they thought it could be sold for, and so we targeted that. When we moved it down to the sources, we felt that we should not be targeting a sales price at this time, because there was no potential buyer in mind. And just the fluctuations of what's going on out there. That's why I put it back down in the purchase price. But here, because I'm taking that, it's taken out 1.7, I had to absorb cost. So
Let's just add another reason that we're interested in having it at the actual price we paid is a consideration to the library board. And it's something that we've been debating about, is we may actually want to purchase it. And if we do, we would purchase it from our reserve fund It's not a bond piece. And that's just an option. At some point farther along, we're going to need to sit down and talk about as a board what we want to do with that.
And as we go through this budget, please interrupt me if there's questions as we go, because I know it's hard to remember questions about numbers if we wait till one quickly. So that was the change on the site and due diligence line item. The construction part budget did not change. That's at 87.5, and that we've been holding for a long time. And again, I would say that's really sound. We're, committed to Kirby already. Over 50% is under contract. We are working on, we're doing a full 4 amendments to establish their GMP. We've done 1 and 2. 3 has been put out to the subcontractors. Kirby received those bids. They're going through them. We will present the next amendment for approval in May to you guys. I went through a preliminary review with Kirby today based on the bids that they've got and the budgets established for the group of sub-trades, and they're all trending to be generally at budget or under budget. So we're really seeing it to, again, remain very sound and solid at our 87.5 million budget. We will be down to about 10 million left to bid in subcontractor costs. So which is probably about 12% or so, overall. So it just, again, we're lowering risk because we're getting subcontractors under contract. And so that is still doing really well. Within the 87.5, we have a designed estimating escalation contingency that helps to just for any final design changes, the estimating things of did they think this or that, and what's going on in the market, especially with inflation. So that contingency is actually holding as well, not burning through that. Sometimes you use a little bit, but it offsets any bids that come in higher than anticipated. Still looking really good, and like I said, we'll go through that more next month. The next one is the FF&E, and it's also some places noted as owner hard cost. And that's all of our shelving, all of our furniture, our early warning, move costs, AV/IT equipment, all of those kinds of components, everything we're buying, not from the general contractor. And you can see that went up, about 840,000. And it's predominantly our shelving system. As we really went through, set up our shelving budget quite a while back. And as we've been working on developing the shelving, and as we've gone through, really made a lot of changes to the shelving systems and everything and how we're doing it based on what we've learned and what we designed in the other ones. I think the other is a bit of escalation in there of what's happened over time when we had set that budget previously to what numbers we got when we updated it here this past couple of months. So it was something that we know and really anticipate that's going to be where our total shelving budget will be up by that much. That is currently, the shelving system design is complete. It's out for pricing right now with our vendor, Space Saver Specialist. So we'll be receiving their pricing in May. And we'll really have a full update then as to how did it come in relative to our updated budget. In the soft cost budget, and you can see there was a reduction in soft costs that matched the increase in the owner costs. And what that was is our systems development charges, which is fees that we pay to the city and therefore sewer, water connections and transportation fees. Our original budget that we established was quite a bit higher than our actual costs are coming in. So the city was able to give us an updated current estimate based on our 100% plans here the last 2 months. And we recognized, hey, there's gonna be unused funds. So instead of drawing money out of our contingency, I reduced the budget for our systems development charge and transferred it over. And so that's why you see a move from soft cost to the owner card cost. I'm not sure if I'm gonna lose my connection, it's spinning again, but it's still up there. Yeah. We'll see if it comes back. Hang on, buddy.
Okay.
So
To have this document.
Yeah.
Up here.
if you want to share that, you know, I'm back online.
Okay, well, just let me know, just in
Okay.
case.
We'll see how well this. I don't know. I just don't have a strong connection. So that was, oh, it's not sharing.
There you go.
There it is. I just,
Got it.
there. So that was on our soft costs, our construction contingency, and I do want to go through the contingency spreadsheet to, in more detail, look at all that. So this construction contingency, which is on all of those categories above, has remained the same. There was no change to that contingency. The overall budget for the central library also remained the same. Why did I say that? I wrote that. Oh, just the part contingency remained the same. The overall budget did change because of the 1.7. Sorry. So unless there's any other questions, I'm going to move on down. On downtown Bend, that one had the greatest amount of change. And you'll see there is a lot of money that was moved from our bond finance category. And in there, we had, remember last fall, we moved the interest earned that at $11 million. We had been allocating that to project contingencies, you know, for the first couple of years as it was growing. And then last year, when in talking with the arbitrage attorney, they did their first review and we stepped back and said, okay, we think we owe the government a whole lot of money, and we moved all the money, like $8 million, over to a holding account in bond finance as a potential liability. And then over this past few months, the arbitrage attorney went back through, looked at all of the estimated earnings that we're gonna have and created an estimate for PPL to say, here's what we think your tax liability will be at the end of bond program. From that, what we did is we ended up recognizing, you know, I think last November, we had recognized about and from the 8 million, we reduced it to 6, and now we reduced it another 4 million. A lot of that went into downtown Bend. As you can see, downtown Bend's overall budget increased by 3.6 million. And so the parts that changed a little bit on site due diligence, that was just a site survey that we had. The construction hard costs increased. We advanced about $41,000 of work with the fire alarm contractor to deal with some components that were going to be replaced that are struggling to live. And so we just decided to change them now. So Robert had gotten a proposal from Siemens to have them go in and replace these components. The ones that will remain, and it just will, instead of dealing with problems, it fixes it right now, and instead of doing it. The other is $1.3 million was increased. Roughly, we had a $13 million hard cost budget there, and I increased it by 10%. And that was the $1.3 million, and it's set aside there for the effects of inflation and escalation. You know, we're always trying to, so as we were pulling these monies out of what we'd set aside, we're pushing them back into the projects. And so that was one where we felt the risk was there.
Great, just to, when you're saying we have adjusted the numbers, it's from the report dated 1/31/24. So just to save that confusion, it's not the original budget column that's to the left. So if anybody wanted to see that report, I have it right here. Sure.
Yes, because that is true, right?
Yeah.
I forgot about this. It's compared to the original budget, not our last revised budget. So there's, I see what the confusion would be. So we did increase that by the 1.3, and that's set aside, I would say, for anticipated cost escalation, just of what we're seeing. Under the owner hard costs, we also increased that right at about 600,000. And that was things what we looked at is to really compare Redmond and downtown Bend because they are so similar in size and how the buildings are being used and how downtown Bend is going to be very similar. So we looked at what are we actually paying for our furniture systems as designed and bought in Redmond. It's same with shelving and all of them. And then also looked and said, how much are we anticipating for inflation there? And so I bumped them all up to one, make sure we're aligned with what we're spending in Redmond, but also said, hey, I need to increase each of these a certain percentage because we're going to buy them in 2 years and inflation is going to continue. And we had built some inflation in there, but it just didn't feel like it was enough based on what has continued to happen throughout the industry. So that was the changes there where it went up. The soft cost budget was somewhat similar. I looked at all of the soft cost line items that are in there, and overall it went up about 330,000. And I just looked at, okay, how tight are the line item budgets, and where do I think they're going to be there? Are they sufficient to cover what we're doing? A big piece was I increased our commissioning. We've talked a lot about our commissioning of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, and our budget for downtown Bend was originally set, in my mind, too low. Knowing what we're going through and what we're doing at Redmond and the other branches. And so that was one that I really took up quite a bit. That was probably half of this adjustment, is to really take that. One of the other areas that, the contingency there, I increased that as well, and that went up to almost 1.4 million. And in part because with a large renovation, there's a lot more risk associated. Allocating funds into the owner's contingency for those surprises are more likely. We're really taking a hard look at the exterior skin of downtown Bend. Team was out yesterday, or actually this morning, yesterday, going through and really looking at where old water leaks have occurred, where current water leaks may occur, the conditions of the window systems, the roof systems, and some of those things. And I think it's just one of those areas where's the potential for risk, cost impacts, and the unexpected. It's going to be at this point on that bill because it's existing. We're gonna renovate it, and I think that's an area that when we originally set up the budget. Saying, okay, this is all an interior renovation and then a renovation of all of our MEP systems, and we had planned for a certain amount of skin. I think this is an area where we could see the scope increasing. And to really set the building up for the longer term. So I bumped that one up, and like I said, overall, this budget increased by 3.7 million. I think the other part, thinking behind that was, well, I said, we wanted to make sure to not spend all the money and then have nothing left over for the last project. And being the original downtown pad, it's a very important component. The Redmond building, not a lot of changes there. The site due diligence remained unchanged. The construction cost remained unchanged. Just going through that, so that's the budget we established when we set Kirby's GMP and has been holding all the way through. And so the contingencies within their GMP are absorbing the costs that we've had as we make changes and deal with issues. It's still looking very sound as we are coming into the final stretch, and we've got about 6 months left to get through, a little less than that. And so we're still very comfortable with that budget there, so no changes on there. There was a little bit of a change on the owner hard costs, and it was just, it's like 200,000, but it's a little bit here, a little bit there, scattered throughout of the shelving, artwork, early learning, and temporary facilities. So it was just looking at where is the actual cost today, where do I think they are going to end up, and so I bumped those up a little bit. The soft cost budget, it decreased or was increased by about 60,000. That again, it was there were a little bit of design costs. So last month we went through some of Miller Paul's addendums, and that was part of it. And then also our testing inspection, I just bumped that up a little bit. That's performed on an hourly basis, and it's not an area we cut back on. And to push and say do more, let's double check it with all of our testing inspection. So I just bumped it up a bit there where I thought we might need additional there. The on this one, the contingency was actually reduced by 250,000, and that was just based on the level of risk that the project is at, where we're at, and its overall condition. It just felt like, okay, we don't need to have all those funds sitting there. Let's move them back into other projects or into our master reserve. The work package for, so Sisters of Lion, Sunday River, and East Bend. This one had a big reduction in budget because there was a big reduction in scope with East Bend. And so we recognized that this period. And so as we went through that, the site due diligence did not change. There was no change there. The construction budget did go down, and that was really, on this one, we break out the different buildings. And the big change was in East Bend, where it was decreased by $1,450,000 down to the budget we had established when we went through the program with the board in January. On the owner hard costs, very similar in that it reduced by 500,000 was the reduction in East Bend budget for that package. But we did have some increases, and the largest increase was around, we had gone through the design assist with the early learning contractor last month and talked about their adjustment. And so this is where a lot of those dollars are being put to go against, because so much of all of their early work that they did, all the hours they spent, was in this work package. And so that's why you see there was it's like 200, almost 260,000 increase. There was a couple of other things because we had an increase on the shelving systems as well. But those were so 2 increases off of with 1 large reduction. Soft cost budget, there was just a little $2,500 change, and it had to do with the Miller Hall adjustments that we made last month. I had a lot of money already in the budget, but $2,500, so minor change on that. The contingency, I increased it by about 26,000. And that really was just to, when I looked at, okay, what's left and where is the contingency level, that's where I just felt I wanted to get it. And I look at them at the dollar amount and the percentage of it. So overall, budget went down by $1.6 million, almost $1.7 million. I'm gonna go over to the contingency report. So this is a new report that, so hopefully this is giving you guys the information you wanted. And if not, let me know if there's something more or something different that you want to see. So when you look at the total combined contingency, and I did realize I had in my written report a error in the way I wrote up that last combined contingency. It was just misstated. It did not remain unchanged. It actually increased. Prior, I think the way it's written on the written report, it says that the prior combined contingency remained unchanged at 18 million. Well, that was incorrect. The prior contingency was 15,381,000. It increased up to the 18,544,000, which was an increase of about 3.2 million, just under 3.2. And the percentage increased from 6.76 up to 8.2%. I just wanted to point out that there was an error. The number did. So this, again, this total here is the combined contingency that is allocated into the 4 work packages and into the reserve contingency, which is outside of those packages.
So, right, so this report, basically, you just went through the contingencies we had for each of the packets. This is just breaking down those same numbers further, showing us how to go.
Yep.
Right.
So within each of the projects, work packages, we have contingencies. So you can see under the original budget how those contingencies were originally set up. And one of the things is that a lot of contingency was in the original reserve budget. That was driven by our premiums that were generated in the way the original budget was established, which was a budget created for the bond vote. So it's real early. And we used that very, very early budget so that we can always say, okay, where did we start at the very, very beginning? How did we go forward? And we made a lot of adjustments to the budget once we got going and said, okay, let's figure out. So that's why you see in the very original a whole lot of contingency, 32 million sitting in the reserve. And we started out with 35 million contingencies and then started distributing it out to the work packages and also spending, as we go through. That is what happens to contingency. So, looking at the totals here, we started with that 35. To date, all of our revisions are minus 16.5, which takes us down to the 18.5 million today. And so when those dollars come out of contingency, they're going into hard costs, soft costs, you know, where we're actually spending those dollars. They're not necessarily spent yet, as they've been allocated to the expenditure categories. But we're tracking that there's available contingency that it's not designated at this point, 18.5 million. And so you can see that originally contingency was at 16.7% of the budget, and it's now 8.2% of the budget. So about half. So as you, that percentage kind of changes with as you increase, it's the budget of what's being spent. And our budget also grew when it first started because of the interest and stuff. So the percentages can look like they don't add up. Within each of the projects, when I set up the budgets, I look at them as a budget contingency amount for hard costs, for the owner hard cost, and for soft costs. And I do those in dollars, and then I always track my percentages. Because it's just kind of a rule of thumb. What percentage of contingency are we holding? Where is that at? So you can see on central, I like to always be around a 5% contingency before, as we start into construction, which is where you see this sitting at a little over 5% on hard costs. The owner costs sitting at about 9%. It's a little bit higher. We're still designing some of those components. That's the early learning stuff. It's still designing the furniture. That's still designing, and it's to be a little bit more fluid and change where that's going. The soft costs, it's down to 3.8%, and that's because a lot of those are committed costs and they're known, and so there's less risk of those. Overall, it's sitting right at 4.87, about 5% contingency. So felt good about that. When you compare that to Redmond, you can see that's dropping, and we're down to about a 3% contingency because we're much further along. And that was why, you saw I reduced that by a couple 100,000, 250. It just, there's lower risk. And so I felt more comfortable pulling each of those down. The downtown band, you can see percentage wise, they're huge, right? Well, we're at concept stage. We're just starting the schematic design. So the chance for change, the risk is highest right now. And that was partly why I wanted to put more contingency dollars. I put more money in the hard costs as well, 1.3 for escalations. And there's actually, and that's not considered a contingency line, it's considered cost of work. So it's built into that line item, plus we have this contingency on top of it. So this is the very conservative approach of, okay, where is the risk? And you can see, construction is the highest risk. These dollars out of the 4 million, they could be used on any category. I just put them into my 3. So how I think about it and how I assess risk. They're rounded up because I rounded them up in doing this budget update to see where they ended up. Overall, about 15.5% contingency. And as we go through the design process and the budgeting process, I expect to see that fluctuate and generally fluctuate down. The branch libraries, it's sitting at about $1 million there. Our real big risk is on Sun River. The other 2 were predominantly done. East Bend has a lower risk because of the scope of work that we defined. It doesn't have as much risk, although it's just conceptual idea. But it's on the amount of dollars we plan to spend, there's not as much risk there. Sun River has been, we've had a lot of changes there because of unforeseen conditions in the building. Now, we're getting past a lot of that now. But as we dove into the site work, we found things that we weren't expecting. Had to make more changes, and overall, I would say we're comfortable, but I've left these numbers up a little bit there because of just that risk going on, to make sure that we had it properly allocated. When I talk about the reserve contingency, it's actually two components. One is the master contingency, and that's tied to the general administrative budget. So that's the 13 million for general administrative costs, where we really have the collection and that kind of stuff. And so I allocate that, and that's why it says it's 7%. That's really of that 13. So the collection is something it is being bought, and that's a big number. It's like $7 million or so stuff to buy for the whole library of all this. And over time, what is that really going to cost us? Set aside that, and I try to put it in a bucket to say, okay, I can't touch that, but for use up here. Then this other 4.8 million reserve contingency that's contingency set aside that is not designated for anything. That's the other rainy day fund. If we run out of these project contingencies somewhere and we have a huge need, this is set back here. So, and it's 2% of the overall budget out of there. And so it's, again, it's the layers of contingency. To me, this is really in part fueled by our interest earnings to be able to carry this much big backstop contingency on the project. But it's going to be there if there's any big surprises. Something new comes up that is like, well, this is really great. So it's funds that would be available to DPO. Questions? Thoughts?
Greg, I have a quick question. At what point does the contingencies for Sisters and Lapine, let's say, once those projects are completed, well, they should have been completed, but now we're in I guess, a short remodel. But at what point do those go away?
So, Sun River will wrap up this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the current planned additional scope that we're doing, around the control systems and stuff, is planned to be finished this year.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually look at it, Bunny, that here at the end of the year, of this calendar year, definitely by next fiscal year,
Mm-hmm.
we would really reconcile that to take it down. We'll have a little bit of East Bend work that will carry into next calendar year, but would be completed within the next fiscal year. So definitely after fiscal year 24-25, we would probably reconcile this one and take it down.
Okay.
Reduce it down to either 0 or if there's any risks. Part of the bond program, it does allow DPL and you guys to still, we've done the plan work at these locations, but as we go through it, we recognize, wow, here's a change that we would want to implement. You always have that option to utilize those bond funds for anything. And I say that because of the lessons learned, and we keep finding things of, wow, this is a great idea that we maybe didn't know about back then, but it would benefit the district. So you will have that ability to utilize those funds if you want them, or move them. Anything that's unused would just drop into the reserve contingency.
Okay. And so all the branch libraries are kind of lumped into the contingency rather than pulling out Sisters is done, Lapine is done. We're just leaving it as branch.
Correct.
Okay,
Is the work package. Yes,
okay.
Well, I just wanted to say, I really appreciate the time and care that you put in on this since I was doing this question. And this is very helpful to understand where the money's allocated and where we are in the process, particularly since we have moved and changed categories a lot. And so I guess my bottom line question is, do you feel comfortable with where we are at in this spend down of the contingency funds? As a manager of this project overall, are you feeling good about where we are financially on the contingencies, or are there areas of concern that you have?
No, actually, I feel really comfortable about it. I think that, and that's why I try to move funds out of contingency into budgets if I believe we need to spend it.
Right, right.
And then I try to adjust the project contingencies to the level I think is appropriate for risk for each of those.
Right.
So I feel really good about where we're at on the forecasted costs for each of the projects.
Mhm.
I feel really good about where we're at on the contingencies we're holding for project budgets, but also the amount that I left in this reserve contingency to say, I don't need to plan to spend that anywhere.
Mhm.
And so that actually makes me feel really good that because I didn't know if I would be at that level still after going through all of the reviews. And the reviews were looking at what are the current contracts, what are the current commitments that we have across the board?
Mhm.
What are our current cost estimates across the board? The area that gave me the most concern was downtown Bend.
Mhm. Right.
And you can see, because I had funds there within our contingency package, I said, I need to move money here, because that gave me the most concern. Because it, in my mind, had the most risk for cost impacts. Central is our biggest project and the most complex project. And so internally, I had a lot of concern of, okay, how sound are those budgets? And with the construction cost being 87 million, you know, when you look at just that one line item out of 244, it's, you know, it's a big percentage. And where we're at in the purchasing of that, and where Kirby is at in the subcontracting and the buying and how that's going. I feel really good about it. I made him walk me through a whole bunch of stuff today.
Right.
After our owners meeting, because I wanted to feel confident about how this. And so I feel really confident about that and comfortable with that. The shelving, I didn't want to increase that, but I felt that was the prudent thing to do. Because I knew shelving's not an area we want to cut back. It's the display of the library's product. It's the primary thing. Tom just told me that.
Yes.
Shelving's more important than building.
Big deal.
So that was something that I looked at and said, okay, we're never gonna say, let's cut and cheapen this up. And so I wanted to allocate that. And that gave me, you know, as we were looking at what's the design doing, what's the cost doing? You gotta put that, and you know, it's almost $1 million more that we're gonna spend on shelving. And but it's an important allocation, I think. So very high confidence level, right now.
I just want to remind the board, I've got some staff that are going to present today and they're waiting patiently.
I'm sorry, I just.
That's
My short thing didn't go so short.
Yeah. Just if we don't have any further questions for him. Bunny, if we could move up Jenny Pedersen's presentation and move the budget committee to after Robert. That would help us out.
Okay. And so we'll move the budget down to the bottom here, but
Yeah,
which presentation? Oh, Jennifer Pedersen,
yes,
the law
Which-
library.
who I believe is lurking out there somewhere, Jenny.
Right here.
I've been looking all over. I saw you come in on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, she's hiding right in plain sight.
Sit over there.
Yes.
See if I can mess around with this. Oh gosh, it's been really a long time. Since I've had to present on Zoom, so bear with me. I'm gonna stop my share for a second. I think I need to do this first.
All right,
There we go. There we go. I'm gonna. You ready? Excellent. On Tuesday night in March at East Bend Library, two strangers bonded over their fears and hopes of a family member preparing to return home from prison. Last week, his father, living in a house with his children with mold issues, was triaged into legal aid services after speaking with a volunteer attorney in order to help get his landlord to make the necessary repairs. Yesterday, in Redmond, a woman was able to access the court documents pertaining to her 2 years long divorce and find materials to help her represent herself in. This is just a small sampling of the things that the law library helps with every day. My name is Jenny Pedersen. I have worked as a community librarian for Deschutes Public Library since 2010, and I have overseen law library services since 2018. And I'm here tonight to share with you about the law library, what it is and what we do. So in Oregon, it is mandated that each county provide a law library for the public. And in 2015, Deschutes County contracted with Deschutes Public Library to run its law library. Our mandate at that time was to serve the public and self-represent litigants. And this is really important because we have a civil legal justice crisis in our country. A 2018 report found that 75% of Oregonians experienced a legal issue at least once a year. And that number went up to 5.4 for low-income Oregonians. There is a real need for help with legal issues. Funding for the law libraries comes from the Oregon Judicial Department that is funneled to the counties. We have a contract with Deschutes County that stipulates how much money we receive. And I believe it's been $150,000 since the beginning. And I understand that Todd has just negotiated an increase to $182,000 per year. So what do we do with that money? The bulk of our funding goes into our collection. Legal materials are very expensive and they are updated frequently because the laws are changing all the time. We maintain a small physical collection at the Downtown Bend Library. It's about 750 to 800 items, depending on when you look. We do keep a small research collection, but the majority of the physical collection does tie into that mandate from the county. So it is materials about and for Oregon law, designed for lay people and self-represented things. Our contract with the county does also stipulate the kinds of legal materials and legal information that we need to provide. And we use a myriad of electronic resources to provide those requirements efficiently, both in terms of cost and space. Speaking about shelving, there's no way that we can house all of the legal materials, probably in all of our, well, Downtown Bend anyway. So through these digital resources, we are able to offer state and federal statutes, case law, administrative regulations, as well as legal treatises, articles, and practice materials designed for lawyers. Of particular interest is OJSON, which is the Oregon Judicial Case Information Network. This is the court's record database of the Oregon Judicial Department, and DPL is a pioneer in being able to offer access to this resource at a public library. We were able to negotiate that access through the Deschutes County Access to Justice Committee as a need to provide access to these court documents to people living in the rural areas of our county, so that they did not have to drive into Bend to access them at the courthouse. So that's a pretty exciting one for us to have. Along with our collection, we offer legal reference services in a variety of different ways. So people need to be able to know how to access legal information and how to use it. And honestly, it is one of the most confusing things to get into. I am lucky enough to have a small law library team of public service specialists at our downtown Bend location. Last year, the law library received over 1,100 inquiries. Raquel Velquez Reyes, Rochelle Maplethorpe, and Pat Gibbons received extra training in legal reference. So they are able to help me answer those phone calls, emails, and support staff at the downtown library with in-person requests when I'm not there. Once a month, I travel to each of our communities to provide in-person legal reference services. And we also maintain lists of resources, organizations, and referrals by legal topic on our website, so people can access that even when we are closed. And we offer programs, and I do apologize that I do not have fun photos for these, but people don't really want their photo taken when they have legal issues. Our biggest and most well-known is Lawyer in the Library. So this program offers people a free 30-minute consultation with an attorney. I'm very excited that we were able to keep it going through the pandemic. At one point, we were down to one lawyer who could provide family law help. We are back up to, we're building up our volunteer roster, and we are again able to offer appointments for both family law and any other general civil law question on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So far this year, we have helped 182 people through that program, 7 with a Spanish interpreter. Also this year, we added a notary public in the library program. That was brought to us by law library team member Pat Gibbons and notary Lorraine Schechter, who wanted to really wanted to do this with us. So we piloted it, and I don't think that we have ever had. We've had one day where nobody showed up, and it was one of those horrible ice days in January. Usually we see about 3 or 4 people come into that program. We have added on another volunteer notary, and we offer it the first and third Thursdays of the month. We also are able to provide legal presentations with the support of our legal community. We have been able to offer general programs on family law, landlord-tenant law, naturalization. The ones that are recorded are then housed on our YouTube page as well, so people can access them there. And we do have a law and legal playlist on that YouTube page. And I'm really excited next month. We are going to host our first legal clinic. We have 2 lawyers coming over from Portland Community College's Clear Clinic to help people file their expungement paperwork to get eligible charges and arrests cleared from their records, so that they can then find housing and get jobs and do things that is preventing them from doing. So we will host one in Lapine at Lapine Library and one at downtown Bend. Honestly, we couldn't do a lot of the work that we do without our partnerships and relationships. This is just a sampling of some of the organizations that we work with. The most important really is that first one, the Deschutes County Access to Justice Committee. That committee is made up of members of the Deschutes County Bar Association, Legal Aid Services of Central Oregon, the Deschutes County Trial Court, and a rotating members from various community organizations. It is from that committee that both Lawyer in the Library and our Access to ADJOURN originated. And I think it's also important to note that we are seen as a key partner in the local and state legal landscape. We are often approached to participate in forums and summits and discussions on legal issues that impact the lives of our residents. And again, that's just sort of a sampling. And I just want to thank the board and management for having the courage to bring the law library to the public library and continuing to support this very meaningful work. I'm happy to take questions now, and if anybody wants to chat further about this, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to go deeper.
I just want to highlight that when the county first called us, Lynn and I went and checked out the law library at the time. I had to step out because I was having a panic attack. It was a useless library and nobody was using, basically there were a couple of lawyers that had a key that they could come in after hours. Most lawyers didn't use it, the public never used it.
Yeah.
And you've taken this beyond our wildest dreams of making this available, and especially in Deschutes County. It used to be anywhere in the county, you had to come in then during specific hours, and these are people that may have the hardest time getting.
Yeah.
And now it's available throughout the county.
Yeah.
It's amazing. A change, positive change we're able to make in a partnership with counties.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just would add too, I mean, thanks to Jenny and years of work with Lawyer in the Library. When we started this with Todd and he had to walk out, the idea with the court, the justice court and everything, what they wanted, Jeff Holland.
Yeah.
Their idea was, we don't want this for the lawyers, we want this to be. We need to reach our public, we need it more, and that's why they came to the library in the first place. But yeah, Jenny and her team and all the years of work that we put into it, I think it's even surpassed what they had hoped it would even become. So congrats to you all.
Thank you. And I'll make one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Smith and Sean says hello. But with the creation of the licensed paralegal program in the state of Oregon, do you have any plans or hopes to be able to expand, not necessarily a lawyer in the library, but
absolutely. Yeah, I think that is so important, and this is getting away from, it's so new. So we haven't really had those discussions yet, but there was an editorial in the Bulletin earlier this week or last week and talking about it and talking about people not being able to afford a lawyer, which is a big part of it. But I think what they missed also is we're in a legal desert. So often people can't even find a lawyer, even if they can afford one. And you go further east in this state and it gets even worse. So just to have any more access to help, I think is really important. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that program does and how we can create further partnerships. Yeah, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What does the funding go towards? Is it specified to just resources? Does it support you with training?
Yeah, actually, let me just back up. There's a quick budget here. So the county does not determine, or they don't stipulate how we spend the money. And this is how it goes through our budget committee, and we submit any changes that we want to make. But you can see, the majority of it goes to collection development. We have a small budget for education and travel, contractual services, and then the money into the general fund. That doesn't even cover my salary or the amount of support that we get from being part of the public library, which is IT, community relations, the website, tech services that does all of my ordering and cataloging, so. Yeah, exactly. It does. Absolutely. And just speaking about that, I will put in a quick plug, just sort of broader than this law library. Next year, the Oregon Library Association is gearing up to push for increased funding to law libraries across the state. And you can see we get $150,000, and we are probably the most well-funded law library on this side of the mountains. So what you get from your law library varies widely across the state. So if you are speaking to a state legislator, I hope this is appropriate to say here, you know, plug our services, say how much you appreciate the law library if you do.
I will highlight that it dawned on me, we hadn't changed the amount of money the county was giving us since it started.
Yeah.
So I asked Jenny for some ammunition, she gave it to me, and they worked. They went, because we have the advantage of knowing how much they get from the state.
Yeah.
They actually went a little beyond what they get from the state.
Yeah.
For this year.
Yeah. And that does fluctuate. I think the legislature allocates the money in like 3-year chunks. So sometimes the county gets more than what they're paying us, and sometimes it dips under. So yeah, hopefully we'll continue to even out or be close to that line or above it.
Yes.
I just really appreciate how hard you worked with all the partners, because I think this has really been a group effort that you led, you know. So that it's more useful to attorneys, it's way more useful to the public, and to have this resource and to really be thoughtful about the services you're providing. But you know, just the notary service is huge for people.
Yeah.
And so this is really practical help that people know they can get now at their public library. And I think it's just tremendous. And I can tell, I went back and reread your report, and there are references throughout that, the ways that you're looking at making things better all the time. And I just really appreciate everybody's hard work on this. I think it really is wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne.
I think that's so true. This is such a wonderful asset for the county. My question is, how does this information get disseminated to the general public? Seems like there would be so many people, particularly underserved, that have no idea. Do the courts at any point in time, when they particularly have underserved people, suggest that they go to the library?
Oh yeah, we have a really good relationship with our local court. We actually usually do an exchange. So 2 months ago, court clerk staff came to the library and I gave them a tour. This month, actually next week, the law library team is going to the courthouse for a tour and a meet and greet. So we maintain that really nice relationship. It is, you know, a lot of people don't know that law libraries exist. And then add on to that, a lot of people don't realize that the Deschutes County Law Library is housed in Deschutes Public Library. That is our biggest challenge. People don't think about it until they have a legal issue. So word of mouth from lawyers, from the court, from other community partnerships, or you know, other community organizations that we work with. That is the way that people find out about us. And that our #1 marketing device is Lawyer in the Library. Absolutely. That's how people find their way to the law library.
Right.
I saw a great social media post featuring you and somebody that was saying how much you helped them just this week.
Oh, yeah, Michael did that.
Yeah. No, it was really effective. I thought it was great.
Fabulous. I haven't seen it yet. I need to look it up.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
presentation. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. I'll look forward to how it progresses, say within the next year.
Thank you, Betty.
So I just want to say appreciate your presentation, and I want to let you know I've referred. I work with process, so I work
Oh,
with
fabulous.
foster care.
Yeah,
And a lot of questions
Yeah.
both from foster parents and
yeah,
from parents and
Yeah.
have
We have-
mentioned the services that are available to them.
perfect.
So really appreciate that resource
Thank you.
for that, again, that underserved.
Yeah.
population. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, Jenny was a palate cleanser from all the budget discussion. Yes, and we're gonna go back into the budget. And let's see. Oh, did I do that?
Good luck.
Thank you, Ken. Robert, are you out there and are you ready?
Oh, do you see me?
Yes,
Can you hear me okay?
yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that we spent a lot of time looking at spreadsheets earlier. My promise to you is we will not look at a single spreadsheet during this financial presentation. We will talk about all of the spreadsheets that went into this presentation, but I will try to keep it fairly light. Okay, so what is the purpose of this presentation for you? Well, as you're preparing for the upcoming budget review cycle, Todd wanted to give the board kind of a longer span view. So the budget focuses on just the current year, and this presentation is hopefully to place that year into a larger context of the last few years and the few years going forward in the near term. The presentation itself will kind of be structured like a little bit of general philosophy of what goes into financial models. Then how does the board play a role in that, both in terms of the decisions they make and then the impacts that it has on budget. And then how do we handle unknowns? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll give you a 5-year forecast with an illustration of a possible alternate forecast depending on just one decision. And that'll help to kind of illustrate the fact that all of these things are highly dependent on decisions that get made. Okay, so let's take a look. It's surprising to me as well. There must be some animation in here. So what is a budget model? This is where we want to start. What exactly are we hoping to see today? I like to encourage people to think of a model as something like a forecast, almost like a weather forecast, where you're taking a variety of data, you're making some assumptions about general conditions, and you're making some broad predictions about like where the trends are going. Now, those assumptions about general conditions really are key, and some of those assumptions hinge on board decisions that have yet to be made in the future. So you have to make certain assumptions of best guess about the direction that things are going to go before a definitive decision's been made. And the purpose for all of that is just like with a weather forecast, it's equipping you with just a little bit of insight in order to make decisions about how you prepare for that future. So, it could be seeing something going in a particular direction and making decisions that alter that direction. It could be setting aside additional reserve to prepare for some outcome that's anticipated. It's all hinging on what you see in the forecast. But the bottom line is that if you don't like a particular forecast, this is where it differs from the weather. You have the ability to change it, right? You have the ability to make decisions that can flatten a curve, steepen a curve. You also have the ability and the responsibility to decide your comfort level with the information that you're seeing and the trends and directions that the forecast shows. So that's all the things that go into what a financial model is. One thing that it's not is that it's not a commitment of funds. So it's one possible future based on an assumption on a set of decisions that have yet to be made. But the way that the actual budgeting works is on a year-by-year basis, and it goes through the budget process. And so really those decisions year after year, and even the ones we make throughout the year are really the building blocks of how the outcome maps to whatever forecast we make in this model. Okay. Budget decision, I'm sorry, how does the board, what kinds of things does the board do that can have those budgetary impacts? There's probably 4 major categories where board decisions really have a tangible financial impact. And the first one is the budget process, the annual budget appropriation, reviewing the budget that the director presents, asking questions, looking at those numbers, making sure that they correspond to the way that the board has laid out policy and direction, which is the second major way that the board decisions have those budgetary impacts. Board results policies get enacted and have a dollar value assigned to them through the budget. And so changes in board results policies, changes in priorities of the results policy can change the financial long-term forecast. And the third area that the board has control of and decision-making power that also has a budgetary impact is real estate transactions. So there's a couple areas where that is relevant for us. One is the continuation of our current lease for the East Bend Library. So that lease extension is coming up due for review in a couple of months. The lease itself continues through December of 2025. However, the owners have asked for about 18 months notice if we wanted to execute a short-term lease. Right now, we're on the second of 5-year extensions. So we had our original lease was 10-year, then there was a 5-year extension. We're on the second 5-year extension. We went back to the owner and asked for the possibility of 2-year extensions going forward to give us flexibility to decide how much longer it makes sense to keep that in operation. And as a result, they asked for that 18-month advance notice. So a decision from the board to extend or to not extend, and for how long to extend, have budgetary impacts because of the operational costs, because of the facilities costs. Another thing to identify are the real estate holdings that the district has that have real tangible value that could be sold at any point and could result in additional revenue. So rather than focusing on how we control the expenditures of a property, the sale of the property that we hold on the north end of town off of Robo Lane, or that second lot that Greg had identified in his review. Each of those right now just represent potential revenue and real assets that we hold. But a board decision to at any point put that up for sale could result in an offset to some of our expenditures and adjust our overall finances. And then that fourth category where board decisions have that budgetary impact are in just the risk management of our financial state. So in addition to the annual budget appropriation process, we have an annual review of our financials where the board members review that financial report. We sit down with the auditor. We look at how we perform budgets to actuals. We also see where we stand in terms of how much how much money we have remaining in each of our funds to carry forward into the next year. And this is an area where it does get a little bit more squishy, a little bit more difficult to define because it really relates to comfort level of what each person may have a different idea of what is an acceptable level of how much money to have in that carrying forward balance. How much money represents enough of a cushion for the rainy day that might happen versus how much is money sitting on the side that's taxpayer funds that could be going towards services and materials for the public. So that last area is one of those ongoing discussions rather than a discrete decision. It's a series of continual decisions among the board about where their comfort level is, how much risk are we managing with that additional amount of money in the ending fund balance. Okay, so in addition to all of the kind of the philosophy of it, what are we basically doing? We're coming up with an educated guess. And to make an educated guess, we have to start by admitting what we don't know, and then start filling in the gaps with enough assumptions to give us kind of a meaningful foundation to make those predictions. So what don't we know? Well, different model inputs can lead to different financial outcomes, right? There's things we can and things that we can't control. In general, the majority of our revenue comes from tax receipts, and the tax receipts are set by the voter resolution that established the district. So revenue will increase year over year, but it's always a function of that tax assessment. So it only really grows as the tax base grows. Whereas the things that are very much in our control are the choices we make for budgeted expenditures. And each of those little adjustments that we make in our assumptions of how we spend that money over time can kind of change the curve and can flatten the curve, it can steepen the curve, or it can turn the curve into a gain. And so the other thing to say is that there's lots of things that we simply know that there are factors in the model, but they're very difficult to quantify. And so you basically just have to kind of make your best assessment with the data that you have. So things that are difficult to quantify are how much will that tax base increase year over year? How much will cost of living adjustments increase year over year, which is related to inflation overall. So how much will the cost of materials and services increase? How much staffing turnover will we have? Staffing turnover can represent a higher or a lower amount of actual labor costs, because you might have a position that takes a while to fill, or you might have just a lot of employees staying with the library for a long time, and so increasing along on their cost of living adjustments. So those kinds of assumptions about how much turnover you expect can have a big impact on your model. And then with the construction projects, we're bringing new buildings online that will have certain operational efficiencies in the way we run them, in the way we heat and cool them, and just in the way that we as a library do business. So those efficiencies could represent cost savings and lower expenditures, or they may not pan out as much as we expect them to. And so that represents an unknown where we just have to make a relatively educated guess about how much efficiency we expect to gain. Okay, so with all those unknowns, how do we start filling in the gaps? Well, first off, we start in this model, the model that I'm going to show you. We started with the last 20 years of financial records. We use that as a baseline for things like trend analysis on salary growth, on inflation of costs of materials and services, on growth in the revenue and tax base, and several other elements as well. So from that base of 20 years of data, we also made some assumptions based on the most current set of board decisions, directives, and policies. So for example, no decision or discussion really has been made about what happens with the administration building after the staff that works in that building relocate to Central Library. And so this model assumes we hold on to the building and we continue to pay the overhead costs, things like heating and cooling and property elements, and just keep it in the district. That assumption may be incorrect. based on a future board decision that has yet to be made. But that's an ingredient in this model. Same thing with East Bend Library. This model makes an assumption that East Bend Library continues operating through fiscal year 26-27 based on the most recent discussions from the board about this topic. Again, no definitive direction to extend the lease past December 2025 has been made. But for the purposes of this model, we assumed that based on the discussions the board has already been having, that we would look at what the financial forecast would look like to keep East Bend operating through that period. Hours of operation. So this is a big one, because if you're running at a high number of hours, then you're going to have more staffing needs, more positions open. And so we assumed that when Redmond Library reopens, that it would have comparable hours to Downtown Bend Library, based on just, again, a general assumption that we would look to operate it at roughly the same capacity as what we're doing in Downtown Bend, right or wrong. So that assumption is an area where we might choose something different if we don't like the direction that the model is going. Same thing with Central Library. So again, the assumption being that we would operate Central Library at the same level and capacity as what we're looking at for downtown. And so that just gives us a baseline in terms of what we think our staffing is, what we think our hours of operation would be. It tells us how long we're keeping the lights on at full capacity or occupied capacity, all of the other costs that go with that. The next three are all really related. Both board results policy, as well as the strategic plan that was presented and approved by the board last year, laid out certain actions that have financial impacts. Things like a reimagination of the organizational structure of the library in order to better match what we're hoping to accomplish with the remodel and the restructure of our buildings, a similar restructure of the way we operate as a district. So there'd be potential growth in community engagement, growth in library operations, growth in collections, and also all of the related materials and services that support each of those elements in the strategic plan. Okay, so with those big assumptions in mind, we're going to look at broad trends. So the numbers are going to be all rounded to a very high number of zeros. What we're looking at here is the first 7 columns in this graph represent the actual data from the last 7 fiscal years, with current fiscal year being a near approximation of what we think the budget to actuals will end at the end of the year. And then the remaining 5 columns to the right are the budget projections produced by this model. So the first thing you'll see is you've got that blue bar representing the annual revenue for each of those fiscal years, the red bar representing the annual expenditures for those fiscal years. And the difference between those two represents the amount of annual ending balance that we have. Each year, if we have a surplus in the ending balance, it goes into that green line and increases the slope. So year over year, it's like putting more money into that savings account. Now, what I'll say is that for the last several years, I would say for the last 5 years, Todd has put together a budget and presented to the board a plan where we were intentionally setting aside additional money in anticipation of the period we're living through now. We're right at the cusp of opening up a new Redmond library at double the square footage. We're looking at opening a new 7th library that's also our largest library and a central library. And also, you know, as we're looking at these various different areas of service and growth for our community, being responsive to meet those needs, it carries a cost. And so we've been preparing for that over the last few years. And you see a model here that reflects that now in the next 5 years, we'll begin to spend that down. It shows a reduction year over year that starts to lower the cumulative ending balance. That green line comes down in slope at about the same rate, in fact, as what we saw the growth trend as well. The other thing I'd say about that is look at just the red bars, and you see there's the most significant jump is in the upcoming fiscal year budget. So this is a little bit of a teaser to prepare you and in anticipation of what you'll see in the budget presentation. The numbers, again, these are rough numbers. So the numbers, the precise numbers in the budget may be different somewhat, but it is a big jump in expenditure for next year that reflects the fact that this is the year that Redmond opens up. It's also the year that we're really gearing up for some of the larger staffing needs across the district for services that we didn't have before. Things like our creative space, things like just the variety of programming and community engagement expansion that we're looking at. And so that is represented here in this model. There are other jumps in expenditures in the next couple years that do relate to staffing increases as other of the libraries open up. But that's really the reason that you see that big jump there. The other thing I'd say about this is that, like I said at the beginning, a lot of this hinges on those board decisions that I mentioned at the front, at the outset. So if we don't like the sharpness of this curve, if we wanted to flatten it, we could make different decisions. We could look at what if we made certain different decisions, what would change in the model? How would that impact this budget projection? The other thing is that if the board felt comfortable with this and said, actually, this shows us that we have enough room to make additional decisions that would commit additional funds, then that might make the curve steeper, and we could look at our comfort level with that. There was one decision on that example slide that I gave you of those various areas that are within our control that I'd like to show you here as an alternate model. So if you were to say, for example, hey, if we wanted to keep East Bend open past fiscal year 26-27, what would be the additional impact financially? Compared this slide to this slide, and you see that for the first few years in the budget projection, it's identical because really the impact would be beyond fiscal year 26-27. And there would be that additional fiscal impact. And the projection shows that there would be less funds remaining, which makes sense because we would be spending more money to maintain that opening. Honestly, it's not up to me to say whether this curve is preferable to this curve. They're both curves. They both indicate that there's an expectation of a certain amount of funds remaining at the end of 5 years with an overall downward trend. And I guess the thing to put to the board is that discussion of comfort level of what is an acceptable amount of ending balance. At what point do we look at this curve and say that curve needs to flatten or it needs to go in the other direction? And that's really one of those discussions that's ongoing. It's not a single decision it's an ongoing conversation of, is this a healthy amount or is this an excess of funds that could be put to good use to continue to serve the public? So I'm going to stay on this slide. I do have a summary slide, but it's just a basic summary slide. I guess that the point is that we've got 5 years of a lot of change. Redmond opening, Central opening, downtown closing and reopening, and a decision to be made about East Bend. And so all of that's happening within the next 5 years. And then there's lots of other associated elements with that. For example, the decision to maintain East Bend beyond 26-27 comes with a decision to expand the collection further in order to support a float across 7 libraries instead of 6 libraries in the district. So there's lots of other threads that get pulled on this based on the decision in the model. And then the other thing, just to say in summary, is that this is really an ongoing conversation. It's part of the budget process, like I started at the beginning and said. And so hopefully this is a chance just to take a look at the bigger idea so that you're armed with a little bit more of where things are going as you're looking at this year's budget in the coming months. So at this point, I'm going to keep the slide up for as long as you want me to, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Robert. I think Robert did this presentation a year ago, and we found it really helpful just to get a sense, because when you do the budget, it really is kind of a point in time. And especially this year, because I'm going to present a budget to you that's going to jump our staffing alone by $1 million. And which feels like a shock, but it's something we've actually been planning for the last 7 years. But the hard part of the budget is it kind of shows you, oh, okay, well, we see what that does to us for this year, but are we gonna still be in business in 3 years? And so this is very helpful to kind of see that this is actually, like, for me, a trajectory that I'd like to see, because we should not be operating at such high levels of carry forward. Because really the public's giving us money to get services, and if we're holding on to it, we're not getting services. So thank you for that, and everything Robert said is really helpful. It's really Robert says a lot. The board has levers to pull to make different things happen, and this is really good information just to give us a sense of where we're going.
Todd, Robert, oh, sorry. The board has levers to pull. Is that once a year we have those levers to pull, or do we assess those levers interim?
That is a great question, and actually is a point that I should have made as I was talking about the assumptions. Really, the board has the ability throughout the year to make any number of decisions that can impact long-term budget forecasts. One example is this assessment of continuation of the East Bend lease. We don't have to wait for the budget review this coming year in order to make that decision. Another one would be just change in the board results policy or change in priorities. I know that that's a thing that the board reviews annually, but if at any point the board wanted to put that on the agenda for review, that's a decision that would absolutely change direction in terms of where and how we spend finances. I'm not suggesting we do it on a monthly basis, but that does represent some areas where the board has more control, more frequent control than just through the appropriation at the annual.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think it's helpful, but as you pointed out, last year, the further out we go, the more esoteric these numbers become, because there are so many variables. And to also hold that tension of, yes, we have a short list of things that we could do that have major impacts, but then there's also opportunities within that 5-year period of what other ways might be smart to allocate this money in different ways than we currently are now. So there's so many variables, but looking at a model spending time each year to kind of see these projections, I think is extremely helpful in planning. As we move forward, and Todd's good about presenting us with opportunities to discuss long-term financial things and what ramifications those decisions have, and short-term opportunities as well. So this is all part of it's good financial information to have. So thank you, Robert. And you always
Yeah.
explain it so well.
Thank you, Ann. And just to expand on that point that you made, in the presentation last year, if you'll recall, I showed a similar kind of a downward trend over the 5 years, including the current fiscal year. And as you can see from the graph with the actuals, we are looking at an increase in our ending balance this current year. And so to me, the benefit of looking at this model and seeing that downward slope is to tell us that if everything happens according to this model's predictions, then funds decrease, but not so much that I feel necessarily like we're going so fast we couldn't make a set of changes to alter direction and adjust that curve. And in fact, that bore out in the last year. We delayed some decisions based on the projects and everything that had an impact in the positive direction, so that we didn't end up eating into the ending balance, we grew it.
Great. Any other questions for Robert on this graph then?
Prior to these 7 years where we knew we had these projects coming, was there an end percentage goal we were hoping for the ending fund balance, or a specific dollar amount? Like, how was that built into the budget?
Todd, I'm gonna reach out to you for assistance on this one.
That is something as a board we never actually discussed. But it mainly because for a long time we were kind of operating, well, especially coming out of I started my budgeting exactly when the Great Recession. So a lot of that was just like, what's survival mode? And then we just, a couple of reasons. One, we started building up a little bit because I was budgeting way too conservative. And with Robert's help, we've really targeted, here is where I did that. And so part of that is we are definitely making adjustments now to make sure that we're budgeting much more accurately. And then the other piece is the board did pass a resolution actually setting what's the minimum amount that you're comfortable with carrying forward. And that's 17% of the expenditures, which comes out to a couple of months of about 2 months of operating expenses. And so maybe we did that in January or February, we looked at that, but we're so far above that right now. It's not one that comes into play, but it's one the board actually thinks about, and I think probably in about 5 or 6 years we'll be thinking about that.
And as I understand, collection development, which will have to have a huge growth in collection, that doesn't come out of our bond funds. That has to come out of our sort of personal funds of DPO.
So the answer is a little bit of a mix. The initial collection development for what's called the opening day is something that is supported by bond fund money. But beyond that, in order to maintain collection at a certain rate, cycling older books out and newer books in order to maintain a robust collection that's also current, that's been factored into this model because that does come out of operational costs.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, Robert, you want to continue on?
That was everything, actually. Yeah,
Okay,
there we go. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop sharing now and hand it back over.
All right, thank you, Robert.
thanks.
Funny, we're up to budget committee appointment.
Oh, we are. Okay.
Right.
I'll let you take that because
Okay,
really don't need to do much, I guess, except vote.
yeah, the ongoing drama of the budget committee this year. We had 2 vacancies and 3 applicants. And then we lost a budget committee member, Betsy Tucker stormed off the budget committee and joined the board instead. So we have 3 openings. When I contacted so one of them to start with is somebody that wants to return, that's Erica Stackpole. She's served 2 terms on the committee, does a great job. And then we had 2 new people. And when I contacted them and to set up the interviews, one of them, the gentleman, DeWord, he had since joined some committees with the applying Parks and Rec and wasn't able to commit. And then the other applicant, Willow, kind of did a little more research budget committee and decided that wasn't for her. So now we're down to 1. I did contact at the board's request, Ashley Carson, who applied for the zone 4 position. She was a strong candidate. And she was interested in serving. And basically the 2 applications are very similar, so I didn't have her fill in a new one. Most of the board has had a chance to meet her, so I didn't want to put her through the application process again. So really at this point, we have 2 to consider, Ashley Carson and Erica Stackpole. And basically by budget law, we do need to make a good faith effort to fill these positions, which we have. We're in good shape carrying forward this year with those. We would need a motion, which I forgot to put on your sheet, and I've written out what that would look like. If you decide to move forward to appoint those, this would be for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2026.
And do we need to have a motion and vote individually on them or collectively?
We can do it collectively, and if anybody is willing to try to read my handwriting, and wants to make a motion.
I'd be happy to give it a try.
Sorry, I scribbled that out.
I can do it. I move to appoint Erica Scaffold and Ashley Carson to the DPL Budget Committee for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2026.
Good job.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Wait, I'm only a 2-year term.
It's actually 24, 25, and 26. It's weird, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it covers 3 years of budgeting. I go through that same exercise every year.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Great,
we-
motion passes. And we don't, Todd, we don't have to vote on the existing 2 members because their term, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay, the next one is your board signature resolution,
Mhm.
and that is, this is something we usually pass every July, and just sets up authority to check signing. We've adjusted this to add our new board members. And it highlights a couple of things. One is, if I'm not able to sign, Lynn or Chantal can step in and sign as well from the staff side. And then lays out the authority for each of the board members to sign. If you have any questions on this one.
And
Yeah.
Todd, each person on the board needs to sign this for you?
No, you just need to pass the resolution, so the motion would be, I move to adopt resolution 21. We have updated the resolution to have Ann Ness as president pro tem sign it, since you're not available.
Okay,
And so that way we'll be in good shape to get our signature cards into the bank. That's
Okay.
basically what we need this for.
great. All right, do I have a motion about resolution number 21?
I move to adopt resolution number 21.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor?
I,
Motion passes, and thank you, Anne, for signing for me there.
You're more than welcome.
All righty. So we're down to library news already.
Yeah. Big news for you all. If you come down to the library tomorrow, we will be closed. We are starting our series of monthly all-day in-service meetings. And really with all of the changes that are coming to the libraries, especially with the new buildings and new services, we really felt like we had the need to get together with all of our staff and dedicate a day to education. And so that's what we'll be doing. I will highlight, if you do drive by and you see smoke rising, the fire department will be out here, and we're gonna be also practicing fire extinguisher safety at the same time.
always popular.
Yes, yeah,
And Todd, are all the libraries closed?
yes.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, so everybody that works throughout the county is gonna converge on downtown Bend, and we'll be here meeting.
All righty.
Yeah, and we'll be doing that on the second Thursday of the month for the next 6 months at least. We may adjust that as we get to the winter months to some type of Zoom meeting, but that's what we're looking at now. Just a reminder that the next board meeting is on a different day. It's May 22nd. And we will meet at 5:30, and then at 6:30, we'll start the budget committee. And the budget committee members will join us. Oh, and I just thought of a couple of things, some kind of cultural quirks from the board. We give you each a notepad. We started doing that so that when we're doing presentations, you can write down notes, and then we can ask questions. That kind of speed things up. It probably helps if I actually tell you what we're doing. And the other one is, why do we sit like this? And it has a lot to do with that thing. It's kind of gathers us around the aisle so people can hear us better. And also so you can see each other. We used to go in a line and it was hard to see each other. Always open to what works better for you. But I was thinking, if I just joined, I would be a little curious as to why we sit like this. Oh, and then the other thing, so we gave Betsy, last month we gave Erin this nice little bag of library things, and we were very worried that the rest of you were gonna get jealous. So Bunny, you can get yours next time, but we also made up one for Ann and Ian, so. There you go.
Oh, I'm definitely jealous.
Yes, if you show up next month, we might have a treat for you.
Oh, good.
Alright.
Okay, and that's my library news.
All right. Oh, do let us know how the day of closing and staff meetings go.
Sure, and if you'll know right away if the fire extinguisher thing doesn't work.
Yes, about those contingencies.
I can just envision the entire staff fritzing with each fire extinguisher and having a ball. Okay, updates on Deschutes Public Library Foundation and Malkin.
Okay, there is a lot going on in Foundation Land in next month. So on May 15th, we have our final author of the year. May 16th, I'm sorry. Robin Wall-Kimmerer, author of Braiding Sweetgrass. And that's gonna be a really popular program, so get your tickets early. And if you have never been to one, please come because they're outstanding. It is the biggest gathering of book lovers in Deschutes County that you can imagine. It's wonderful. And same with Novel Idea. So we have our Novel Idea youth author, Cindy Baldwin, author of Going the Distance, on May 18th, correct? Okay, and our adult author, Emily Haybeck, author of Shark Heart, on June 1st. And don't wait just for those author events. The programming begins May 4th. And if you haven't been to Novel Idea programming, they explore all different aspects of the book that has been chosen for the year and really make the whole experience really enriching. And our programming staff has vivid imaginations, and so the programmings are super creative and they delve into all different kinds of things. So be sure to check your events guide to see what's coming up for those, because this year's book for the author, for the adult selection, is one of the most interesting of all the books that we've selected in our 20+ years. And so I think the programming is, I can't wait to see what the programming is going to be. So I would commend all of those opportunities.
Just to add to that, an interesting piece that we've seen in the past, the quilts that people made, basement, they're back.
Oh,
They're back, and they're gonna be at the Historical Museum. I just lost it on May 3rd, because they're gonna have a kickoff evening. But that's always just amazing, the creativity that comes around what somebody reads in a book, finds in one page, and Brent does the book on. Last year, it brought one of our authors to tears when she saw it, so anyway, that's always a fun one.
Are we limited on how many board members can attend those events before reaching a quorum?
No, just don't talk. Don't talk.
Good point, good point.
Yeah, no, I would love it if everybody were at every event.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, anything else, Ann?
Nope, that is all, that's enough, that's people hopping.
Okay, and critical communication. Todd, you want to kind of explain to the new folks what that means?
We added this as an item just to, in case there's something that came up in the meeting, we felt like that's so important, we need to get the word out to the public about the thing we discussed. And usually I kind of try to assess and throw in my 2 cents on this. I do not see anything here that rises to that level. It's always a good reminder.
Okay. Anyone have a critical communication? All right. Well, let's move on to the self-review of the meeting. Maybe we'll start with Ines.
Oh.
You're the one I can see right now. So.
No, I want to thank Greg and Robert for their presentations on budgets. Greg for the building projects, and then Robert's very clear and articulate presentation on going forward for us. I really appreciated, as I said before, Jennifer's presentation. I think that's an excellent example of what our library does as far as partnerships. with others, and I think it's a real critical partnership that we offer, not only just with the county, but with all the residents of Deschutes County. It's a very valuable program, so it was really wonderful to see her presentation. Thank you.
Mhm. How about Ann Malkin?
Okay, and just in case you wonder what this part of the meeting is about, it's our chance to for us to tell how we thought the meeting went, particularly in regards to our adherence to the Carver model. And it's also where Todd can call us out if we're overreaching and getting into areas we shouldn't get into, but so that's kind of what the reason that we do this. I really appreciated all the budget information and the thoroughness with which both Greg and Robert went through those numbers in a way that made them understandable, because I think that is a big responsibility for us, is to understand our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers. So that was great. And you know, we talk a lot about libraries changing lives, and I think the work that Jenny and her staff are doing in regards to the law library is just a perfect example of that. And there are countless examples happening in all different kinds of programs throughout our buildings, but to have that one spotlighted today, I think just really was a great example of how we're really helping the people in our community that lack the resources in many cases to get the help that they need to live their lives. And the library it's filling that need. So I just think it's tremendous. Thank you.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. How about Erin?
Yes, I would first like to just acknowledge and appreciate the new time for the meeting in the evening. That was actually very helpful, and I want to express that. I want to welcome Betsy. I'm excited to have you here. Get my notes here. Thank you to Greg, and it's great to hear that we're at a comfortable place with the budget reviews for the building projects. I appreciated Robert's report, especially as a new board member. I'm just coming in and seeing some of the historical trends and projections for the future. That was very helpful. And then Jenny's report, I found that to be a very encouraging presentation on access to legal information from Central Oregon's. And then lastly, I just wanted to add, maybe this needs to go in a different spot, but I was able to attend the cursive workshop for kids in Redmond recently, and all the kids there, including my own, had a great time. They loved the activities. They loved the workbook materials they got to take home. They've been sitting at the kitchen table practicing, and they especially loved the cookies that I did.
Great. All righty, how about Betsy?
All right, I'll give this one my best shot. I worked for the county for a period of time and developed portions of their budget and saw the law library come through and didn't really know very much about what I was putting down in the budget. And so super exciting to hear about what that actually is. And I really enjoyed that. Also, I appreciated Robert's foundation that he laid for us as we get ready to view the budget. And I am excited to be here. So thank you for the warm welcome, everybody.
Great. All right, and I'll go and then Todd can go, but I'm will reiterate others. I really appreciate the numbers that Greg gave and an understanding of what's happening at Stevens Ranch. That's getting exciting, and I look forward to these next stages. And I appreciate Robert trying to put these charts in a form that is a bit easier. We're going to see a lot of numbers coming up, so this is nice to be able to understand it. And the law library, the presentations that we usually receive each month from the staff are always a delight and a joy. And it always frustrates me that more people don't know what we do and perhaps take advantage of it. But that is just such a wonderful asset. And you can just tell Jennifer has a passion for it. So that is wonderful. And welcome, Betsy. Todd.
All right, well, I echo everything everybody said. I just want to, again, highlight, thank you all for our first night meeting. And thank you for our staff who stayed up late for that. And you get to, if you wanted to sleep in the building, because we're gonna be here early in the morning to start. So let's do that. And welcome, Betsy. Great to have you on board. It was extra pressure. Robert and I were thinking, uh-oh. We've got somebody that's can really tear apart this budget. So I'm glad we passed the SNEP test. So, and then you said the Carver, what you did wrong on Carver, so you read it, got a long list. You did a great job. We're doing there. One thing to think about for the future is I'll probably start looking for dates for you all to do a work session with our consultant that helps us with the Carver model. And that's Margot Help, and she's out of Eugene, and she was just here today. Her husband wrote a book on growing hops and presented next door. So
And it was another great Deschutes Public Library program for free. Yeah, it was.
it's kind of funny, our staff that signed him up had no idea that she was the one that's been working with us for 20 years.
Yeah.
So we'll all start adding hops to our garden now.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have anything else? All right, well, I will adjourn our first evening meeting.
All right. Thank you, Bunny.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. And you're talking about being late. It is now 10 o'clock almost here, so
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
bye-bye.